Good evening and welcome to the special election 2018 edition of Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. Tonight we feature a debate between candidates for Arizona's 9th Congressional District, which covers parts of the eastern part of Phoenix, including Central Phoenix, Tempe, Mesa, and Chandler. This hour-long debate is a joint effort between Arizona PBS and the Arizona Republic. And joining me tonight to moderate is Yvonne Winget-Sanchez, political reporter from the Arizona Republic and azcentral.com.
Tonight's debate is also being live-streamed at azcentral.com. This is not a formal debate. It's an open exchange of ideas, an opportunity for give and take between candidates. Interjections and even interruptions are allowed, provided, of course, that all sides get a fair shake. And Ted and I will do our best to see that that happens.
Indeed. Joining us now for tonight's debate in alphabetical order, Republican Steve Ferrara, who has served as the Navy's chief medical officer. He also served as combat surgeon in Afghanistan.
And Democrat Greg Stanton, an attorney who was mayor of Phoenix and a former Arizona deputy attorney general.
Each candidate will now give a 1-minute opening statement with the order determined by random selection. Closing statements will be given in reverse order at the end of the debate. And we begin with Greg Stanton.
Well, thanks for having me here tonight. I'm Greg Stanton. I was honored to serve as the mayor of Phoenix for 6.5 years. And I'm proud of the success we had in moving Phoenix forward. And it all started with the proposition that even today, you can reach across party lines to get things done. You know, as mayor, I couldn't afford to kick the can down the road. So together, we created a strong climate for job growth. We created over 130,000 jobs in the city of Phoenix. We had the highest wage growth of any city in the United States of America. We worked to lower health care costs. We completely revitalized our downtown, and we led the way on clean energy. And that's exactly what I'm going to do in Washington, D.C. Be a results-oriented, bipartisan member of Congress, only focused in on getting things done. So we're going to have a good debate here tonight, and I'm sure Dr. Ferrara and I are going to disagree on a few issues, but let me make one thing clear. Dr. Ferrara, I respect your service to the citizens of America. We're going to have a great debate, because while Washington is awash in inflammatory rhetoric and hyper-partisanship, we here in Arizona can be a model for working on solutions rather than gridlock, just like we did in Phoenix.
Thank you very much.
And now, Dr. Steve Ferrara's opening statement.
Thank you, Ted and Yvonne. I'm Steve Ferrara. I'm a veteran, a physician, and a leader. I'm a dad, and I'm a military spouse. I'm an Arizona native, and like John McCain, I'm a former Navy captain. He's my inspiration. I admire John McCain because of his independence and his commitment to country first. That's still my North Star. Like him, I served in combat and on Capitol Hill. I was the Navy's chief medical officer, and now I take care of veterans at the Phoenix VA. But I'm running for Congress because I'm sick of the corruption in Washington, D.C. Greg Stanton has given $1.5 billion to his friends that have cost our public schools $200 million in education dollars that could have gone to teacher pay. So I take this issue up not for pride, but for duty. Just like when I volunteered to go to Afghanistan, and I proved that one person can make a tremendous difference, saving lives and limbs.
We need to stop you right there because the minute is up and we got to get this debate underway. Greg, I think we should start right now with the idea that you have given money to friends and cronies.
All right. Well, let me first, Dr. Ferrara obviously hasn't done his homework here tonight. If he had, he would have known that in the city of Phoenix, under my leadership, any development agreement that we did, we require the developer to give the school districts the same amount of money that they otherwise would have had. So we kept our school districts whole. But what he's talking about is smart investments that we made. For example, we invested in infrastructure out on the Mayo Clinic campus, and you saw that Mayo Clinic just announced they're doubling the size of their campus. You saw that we did an agreement with Park Central Mall on a parking solution, and you saw that Creighton University Medical School is opening a brand new medical school, and I partnered with Governor Ducey, and we invested in the Super Bowl. A lot of people criticize me for the Super Bowl, but you know what? It was the right thing to do. It brought over $800 million of great investment, and we just were announced that the Super Bowl is coming again. We have a record second to none. So many people are moving. We're the fastest growing big city in America, over 130,000 great jobs, the highest wage growth in America, and I'm proud of my record of creating great jobs in our city.
Okay, let's go back to Steve. Now, you made the claim there. You just heard the response. How do you respond?
Well, you know, Greg said I didn't do my homework, but I think the homework has been done, mostly by the Arizona Republic, fortunately. There is a litany of articles from virtually every journalist that covers the political beat, and I would encourage the voters of CD9. I hope you get a lot of clicks tonight. Look at Lori Roberts, look at Dustin Gardner, look at all the folks that have written extensively about how Greg's sweetheart deals for his lobbyist friends and his developers. He said he made great investments. The Sheraton, and that's perfect because that's his quote, a great investment. Only in public service with the taxpayers' dollars could somebody lose over $100 million and call it a great investment. So, I think the record speaks for itself, and these aren't my words. These are the Arizona Republic.
You mentioned you can look at different reporters for the Arizona Republic who have done tremendous work on this, but right now we're looking at you, and we need to find out who these friends and cronies are. You mentioned the Sheraton. What kind of friends and cronies benefited from that?
Lobbyists and developers, and we're happy to post it because most of this is all public. So I have a long list. We did a public records request. You'll notice that Greg Stanton announced that he was going to become running for Congress in October. He remained mayor till within 24 hours of the deadline. During that time, he took hundreds of thousands of dollars of campaign contributions from lobbyists and developers. You know how long it took? Just recently, there was affordable housing opening in West Phoenix. These little tiny homes, affordable homes for the poorest amongst us. You know how long it took to get a permit? 2 years. You know how long it takes to get a permit if you contribute to Greg? 2 weeks. That's a public record. I encourage you to go find it.
All right, good. I have to respond to that, obviously. So the governor and the Republican legislature have given economic development tools to cities across the state of Arizona. And the city of Phoenix has used those economic tools very, very effectively. Again, our record on economic issues is second to none. Over 130,000 jobs created during my time as mayor, the highest wage growth of any city in the country. Where we are right now on Arizona State University in downtown Phoenix was done in partnership with the city of Phoenix. U of A Medical School, City of Phoenix was an investor in. The city of Phoenix has been incredibly successful, and we use the tools that our state legislature has provided us very, very effectively. And on the issue of campaign contributions, I'm proud. I'm running a people-oriented grassroots campaign. I have over 8,000 individual donors. This is a grassroots people-powered campaign, and that's how we're going to win this thing.
As a city councilman, you did support using public resources for the Sheraton Hotel, and by the time the city sold it, it had cost taxpayers more than $40 million. How do you justify, this did include a tax giveaway, how do you justify those numbers? I've
been a great supporter of revitalizing our downtown. That includes my support for public transportation and the light rail system. It includes my support for the convention center, which is now one of the leading convention centers in the United States of America. Since we invested in the Sheraton Hotel, you know what's happened? Over 4,000 hotel rooms have come to downtown Phoenix. We don't make that investment, no Super Bowl. We don't have some of the largest conventions in the country that have come to our city. So overall, our strategy in terms of supporting our downtown and the strength of our downtown has been great, not just for the Phoenix economy, for the regional economy, and for the entire state of Arizona. And we have used those economic development tools that the governor and the state legislature provided us very strategically.
Has it been great?
It hasn't been great. You know, Phoenix is second in the country in extreme poverty. That's tragic. That's tragic. Greg is touting wage growth. He's touting the quality of life here. Second in the country. Do you know what our uninsured rate for health care is in Phoenix, Greg? It's 20%. You know what the national rate is? 10%. We're going to talk about health care, I'm sure. And you're going to talk about what the Republicans did to harm health care for people. Under your watch, the insured rate in Phoenix is double the national average, and it's worse than every surrounding town in CD9.
Yeah, let's talk about
wait, can I finish? Economic development. The only economic development that's happened is for your campaign fund. That's the thing that's benefited the most, because this is a tale of two cities. There's the city that's downtown that Greg takes credit for, that he put investment and resources into. Why don't we go talk to folks in Maryvale? Why don't we go talk to folks in Sunny Slope? Why don't we go talk to folks in the blighted areas that got no help, where developers didn't want to do a project, so there was nothing in it for Greg, so nothing got done?
Yeah, I have to respond to that, obviously, because as mayor of the city of Phoenix, I led the way. I put on the ballot public infrastructure transportation investment. And you know where it's going to go next? As the city council just reiterated, South Phoenix. That was under my watch. You know where else the light rail is going to go? Into Maryville. We've had over $10 billion of great economic development as a result of the public infrastructure investments that we have made. We're bringing it to Maryville with the support of Mayor Williams. That's a passion of hers. We are bringing public infrastructure investment to areas of Phoenix that have never had it before, and I put that on the ballot during my time as mayor. I put my name and reputation behind it, and guess what? The voters overwhelmingly said yes.
Well, I've got to take that because I'm glad you brought up Mayor Williams, because in your paper yesterday, she had a beautiful 5-line quote. We are desperate for money. And you brought up the city council. I think they're still over there trying to figure out if they are going to have to levy enormous taxes on people that rely on medical marijuana for all kinds of treatment because the city is broke. They have a $225 million pension payment due this year. They're broke. You quit. You left the bag just like you did when you quit City Hall. And when the recession started, you became a taxpayer-funded lobbyist. You call it the Attorney General's office, but you're a lobbyist by any other name. You are a registered lobbyist. You weren't putting drug dealers away. You weren't putting people in jail. You were lobbying. And you're going to take credit for the Joint Strike Fighter and the sun rising in the east while you were a lobbyist, but you were a lobbyist.
Yeah, I did on behalf of the Attorney General's office when I worked for Attorney General Terry Goddard as Deputy Attorney General. The Attorney General did ask me to help save Luke Air Force Base. As you know, at the time, there was a threat because of development near Luke Air Force Base, and it was the time that the BRAC was going through commission, and the future of Luke Air Force Base was at risk. So I sat both sides down. We came up to a reasonable agreement that saved the future of Luke, and thank goodness Luke is there for the future so we can have that beautiful mission. I'm proud of the work that I did working with Terry Goddard as Deputy Attorney General.
You are leaning into your resume as mayor, city council before that, attorney general's office before that, or in between, I should say. Why are you leaving that job to go to Capitol Hill? Why would you want to do that?
Well, I led the city as someone that was focused in on bipartisan solutions, just focused in on results. Everything we did. I've talked about the job creation that the city of Phoenix has had. We're one of the leading cities in the United States of America, a very positive economic trajectory. We've had a lot of success, and I think that's the exact kind of leadership that we need in Washington, D.C. right now. People who are focused in on working on bipartisan solutions, just getting things done, supporting working class and middle class families like I was lucky enough to do in the city of Phoenix. My experience as mayor, understanding the importance of real infrastructure investment, understanding the importance of doing real comprehensive immigration reform, understanding as the president pulled us out of the International Accord on climate change, how important climate change is to our community as we face extreme heat, forest fires, and the drought. And of course, as we're going to talk about health care, I want to support the Affordable Care Act and keep people insured. I don't want to repeal it. And Dr. Ferrara mentioned Senator McCain. Thank God Senator McCain voted no to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Okay. Otherwise, tens of millions of Americans would have lost health care.
Okay.
I need to answer about why he's leaving his job. We know why he's leaving his job. He's termed out. There's been articles, again, just go through the public media for the past 2 years. What will Greg Stanton do next? The parlor game of prognostication. Greg is termed out of mayor. He needs another public job. He's been a politician for 20 years. And then he actually filed for Secretary of State. So why don't we ask him, why would you file for Secretary of State? And there's a great interview. I can't remember, so I'm sorry, Ted, if it was you, but he was asked, and he did what he does. He obfuscates. He says, we're going to get together. It's like, why do you want to be Secretary of State? Do you have any issues with Michelle Reagan? He obfuscated and all that stuff. Then this seat came open and must have been a better job in his view. So he switched. But he also brought up Terry Goddard, which is interesting because when he became mayor, Terry Goddard was one of the 4 people that signed on saying what an ineffective mayor he was. Remember that? The past 4 mayors. A do-nothing mayor. I think the quote was, meh. M-E-H is from the Arizona Republic.
So why should voters choose you over someone who has actually run a city?
Well, run a city into the ground, I would say. So they should choose me because I have a record of service and a record of success. I'm doing this not because, it's another rung in the ladder. I'm doing this because I'm sick of the corruption in government. When I served in Afghanistan, and in 17 years of war, and I took care of people on the battlefield that were risking more than re-election, risking more than reputation. They were risking their very lives for this country, and they needed a voice in Congress. We have fewer veterans in Congress than we've ever had in the history of the country.
I want to go back to you saying that the city of Phoenix has been run into the ground. We just had a governor's debate here recently, and the governor, a fellow Republican, can't say enough wonderful things about Arizona, Phoenix, and the entire state. What's the disconnect
I think
here?
it's a tale. Again, it depends on who you ask, right? It's a tale of two cities. You know, ask those people. 149% increase in homelessness, 60% just in the last 2 years. I mean, that's abysmal by any standard. And, you know, Greg is touting, you know what our average income is in Phoenix? Do you know, Greg? It's $49,000 a year. You know what it is in the country? $55,000 a year. So fifth largest city, we're like 12, 13% below the national average. So again, it's a tale. There are people doing very, very well in Phoenix, a lot of developers and lobbyists included. So that's what the people of CD9, Arizona, and America have had enough.
Well, the only thing I was going to add on that is a couple things. First, you know, the president did challenge cities across America to end veteran homelessness, chronic homelessness among our veteran population. And the city of Phoenix rolled up our sleeves and got to work. And we were the first city in America to end the tragedy of chronic homelessness among our veteran population. Senator McCain came to that ceremony, and he said he was never more proud of the city of Phoenix than he was at that moment. That was a highlight of my time as mayor. We've put over $108 million into 4,000 housing units, and I'm going to adopt the philosophy just in Congress, just like I did as mayor, as housing first. As we try to break the cycle of homelessness, we're not only going to put a roof over people's head, but we're going to provide the support systems to help them, whether it be mental health care, other types of health care, or even substance abuse. Housing first is the right approach to that issue. And I remember I was the mayor that took over just after the recession. And so we went about trying to change the fundamentals of our economy away from an economy based on real estate and more based on innovation and building an export-based economy. And that's why, during my time as mayor, we had the highest wage growth of any city in the United States of America. We've gone about our business in a very intelligent way, and that's the type of leadership and strategy that I'll bring to Congress.
Mr. Ferrara, you were at the VA when it was experiencing significant problems.
You weren't at the VA.
You weren't there.
No, I was not.
When did you get to the VA?
2016. That's why I came to the VA, and I'm glad. I'll let you ask your question.
Well, it continues to experience significant problems. So what
Absolutely.
you've had a front row seat to some
That's
of those
right.
problems. And what have you done? I mean, you have a litany of issues against your
Correct.
rival here. So what have you done to bring your experience to bear in those issues?
It's been a great deal, actually, because I got there in 2016 as, you know, when Greg was ending chronic veteran homelessness. I don't know, I was just at the Manor House just about a month ago, and there's a couple thousand homeless veterans in Phoenix right now, they say. So again, it's great to have a bumper sticker, it's great to cut a ribbon, but it's got to be durable and it's got to be sustainable. And once he's got the headline, he's on his way. But let's talk about the VA, because I was the Navy's chief medical officer when the VA crisis occurred. And for those who don't know, the DoD and the VA are completely separate systems. We're also a 9.5 million person, $50 billion healthcare system. So my boss was a Secretary of Defense. So he said, gee, I have a big healthcare system. I wonder if I have the problems the VA has. So we went to work to show that we don't. Our access, quality, and safety are excellent in the military. It's first class. But I'll get to.
My question is specifically, from 2016 forward, what have you done?
Mostly I take care. I'm an interventional radiologist. They had never had that at the VA. They never had what I do on staff at the VA until I got there. So what have I done? I started a cancer clinic. Every single one of those patients had to go out for their care, and they had to have fragmented care. So now they're able to get their cancer treated under one roof. I treat complex peripheral arterial disease. And so that is, you know, aortic aneurysms, life-threatening conditions with complex arterial problems. I'm the guy I'm working at the VA tomorrow. And they asked me, my first day I was in orientation, and Ms. Amder, I don't know if you know Ms. Amder, because you didn't actually put a lot of your weight or your soapbox behind the Phoenix VA. You talk a good talk about veterans, but I can't find a drop of ink where you lifted a finger to help anyone at the Phoenix VA from your perch at the mayor's
But real quickly, the question again is, we're trying to figure out what you did to address not just situations that you are qualified for,
Sure.
but addressing specific these were national headline problems, and many of them still exist at the VA. What are you doing? Because we're not seeing your
That's
name
why I'm
in the
running
ink
for
as well.
Congress. Well, exactly. That's why I'm running for Congress. So what I'm doing is I'm taking care of, because what you can do in the short term at the hospital level as a physician is take care of patients who are dying. There are people dying. While you were saying that you were helping veterans, that was the same year that people were dying on wait lists. So I'm making sure that people are not dying on wait lists. I understand the problems with the VA. It's human resources, it's procurement. I work there so I can understand it because it requires an act of Congress to fix it. And this administration, they just passed the Mission Act. The Mission Act goes a long way towards helping the VA.
Could you have done something to help the situation
Let me
at
tell
the
you
VA?
exactly. Yeah, let me tell you exactly what I did during my time at the City of Phoenix to support our veterans. Number one, the City of Phoenix passed a policy to make sure that veterans, people who are called up to active duty, who are city employees, we made up the difference in their salary so their families and children wouldn't be hurt. We won a national award for that program. In addition to the work that I described earlier about ending chronic veteran homelessness and being the first city in the country to accomplish that goal. In addition to that, we work to create jobs for our veterans. Our hero hiring initiatives were hugely successful, and we wanted to help our veteran entrepreneurs. So we have the only incubator for veterans in the entire United States of America. The first one is here, called the Armory, that we set up in downtown Phoenix. Look, Congresswoman Sinema did a great job, I think, serving veterans in her position as the representative of Congressional District 9. That's part of the great tradition here as a representative. And that reputation and that work is going to continue when I'm elected to this Congress, that veterans know my advocacy, and that advocacy is going to continue to fight for them in Congress.
Mr. Ferrara, we've got to get to health care here.
Sure,
on your website and in your political campaign, you have basically said that everyone deserves access to health care.
Absolutely. So if you look at my website, you probably I actually have a three-pronged, unlike bumper stickers and Band-Aids, I actually have a detailed plan. And what I would say is the healthcare reform plans that have been put forth by both the Democrats and the Republicans, their fundamental problem that makes them inadequate is they're done in a partisan manner. The Affordable Care Act had no Republican votes, and the Republican plan had no Democrat votes, and that's the wrong way to go about fixing health care, number one. First and foremost, because no solution is going to be durable. So when I go to Congress, I'm going to make sure I do work in a bipartisan way, like I did when I worked on Capitol Hill, and I was a co-author of bipartisan legislation, $200 billion thing that fixed a huge problem for access for seniors in the Medicare program that I worked with Henry Waxman, the ranking member of the Democrat committee. It passed 51-0 and was signed into law by President Obama and solved that problem for seniors. And so when I go back there, first of all, what you have to do is what the Affordable Care Act did and what the Republican plan did was it tried to eat the whole elephant at once, if you will. It tried to fix Medicaid, the insurance program, and pre-existing conditions all in one sort of omnibus. Those are such disparate policies for people who understand health care that to try to ball those all together, you're going to water down all the policies and end up with poor plans. My plan treats it's more work to do it that way, but you get a better result.
What's your plan?
All right. Well, let me first tell you what I did as mayor of the city of Phoenix. When I first became mayor, our healthcare leaders were frustrated that the Republican in the state legislature wouldn't expand Medicaid and to protect the people, the tens of thousands of people that would benefit from that, and the important healthcare jobs that go along with that. You know what they did? They came to me as mayor and they said, "Would you do it as a city ordinance?" And I said, yes. In a bipartisan vote of the City Council, we passed the Access to Care Ordinance. Tens of thousands of people were able to get coverage as a result. We protected a tremendous number of great health care jobs. We were able to draw down hundreds of millions of dollars that our taxpayers are paying instead of going to another community. And guess what? When Governor Brewer ultimately did support Medicaid expansion in the state of Arizona, she cited Phoenix and the leadership of Phoenix as the model under which to do it. So people watching this can count on me as an advocate. I tell you what I won't do. I am not going to support repeal of the Affordable Care Act. The Republicans in Congress tried to do it. Thank God our Senator John McCain said no to that. If that had passed, tens of millions of people would have lost coverage. People with pre-existing conditions, our loved ones, our family members, would have not had the coverage that they deserve. People with pre-existing conditions should be able to get insurance at the same prices as the rest of us, and that's going to be my advocacy in Congress.
Would you have gotten rid of the Affordable Care Act? How would you have voted on that?
That's the thing. I've never talked about repealing the Affordable Care Act.
So you would not have repealed the Affordable Care Act?
Because what we need to do is get a bipartisan health care solution. What this has become, the Democrats have weaponized the term repeal and replace as a political, it's a soundbite now. It's meaningless. So what we need to do is talk about making real health care reform. And I told you what my plan is. And I actually opened this section by saying that doing anything in a partisan manner, I don't agree with.
Okay, but
fundamentally.
But we're very succinctly here. Would you repeal the Affordable Care Act?
The Affordable Care Act doesn't even exist in its.
Okay, would you repeal what right now serves as the Affordable Care Act?
It's a carcass that has been picked over.
So you would or would not repeal it?
I would fix health care.
Okay, so you would or would not repeal the Affordable Care Act?
That's a false choice, Ted, because I would fix health care.
Okay, but you're not
There's
answering.
Well, there's not a bill.
The carcass, would you kick the carcass away and start afresh?
I suppose if that's the question, sure,
okay.
Because I would start afresh. That's the conclusion that I am willing to agree to, because that's what's got to happen. And as long as, again, we've weaponized healthcare. I mean, look at this mailer from Greg's thing.
Okay.
They make me look like a ghoul, and it's all lies. I am glad that he put FerraraForCongress.com, though. So, I mean, these are the kind of things, the bipartisan guy, this is really what we've been reduced to. I mean, it's really kind of ridiculous.
Would you reinforce the ACA then, Mr. Stanton? Or how do you see fixing some of the issues that even members of your own party have issues with?
First and foremost, we are not going to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Thank God Senator John McCain in that late night vote, that great vote, did the thumbs down, and he protected health care for tens of millions of Americans. And I'm going to go to Congress, and I'm going to support the Affordable Care Act so that people have that coverage. Two, I'm going to protect people with pre-existing conditions. This is rightfully the issue of the day, because one of the hallmarks of the Affordable Care Act was that people with pre-existing conditions, thousands of people watching now, millions of people across America, our family members, our friends, if they lose that protection, they will not be able to afford health care. We don't want to put them in high-risk pools. A high-risk pool obviously means that health care coverage will be unaffordable. You know what else we need to do? We need to reduce drug prices. One of the key questions in this debate is going to be, who do the people watching this trust that is going to actually fight for allowing the government to negotiate drug prices so that drug prices can be affordable? Who's going to fight to allow for reimportation of drugs? Why should someone in Canada be able to take the same pharmaceutical at such a less price? That's why I've committed that I'm not going to take a dime from the pharmaceutical companies in this race, so people have confidence that I will be their advocate and fight for health care.
Let's get a response.
Yeah, sure. For pre-existing conditions, you know, and again, please go to my website, because pre-existing conditions, absolutely. I actually take care of patients. You know, I work at Maricopa County Hospital, the primary safety net hospital for our entire state. I actually live it every single day. And what it says on my website, and again, FerraraForCongress.com, health, nobody with pre-existing conditions should have to go without health care. But the thing is, because most people, like my opponent, have no understanding about how health care works, they don't understand insurance markets, they don't understand high-risk pools. So he has like a couple talking points. He's going to probably bring up McCain and his thumbs down a couple more times, and he's going to talk about reimportation transparency.
But your policy.
Right. So my policy is that actually high-risk pools do work. So what you do, first of all, insurance is a fallacy to say that a person with pre-existing conditions can even buy insurance. What is insurance? Insurance is the actuarial prediction that something is going to happen. And it's a risk pool. If someone already has it, if a person has congestive heart failure, or if a person has Alzheimer's disease, they're no longer in the same insurance pool because they already have the disease. So what we have to talk about is how we're going to care for them. And we do it completely the wrong way now. What we do is we make people have to get into a state of extremis. They have to make a 911 call, an ambulance ride, an ER visit, an emergency surgery, an ICU stay, rehab.
Thank you.
And they have a poor outcome.
Thank you.
We need to take care of them prospectively.
So what happens with healthcare largely is obviously going to come down to leadership in the House. Who would you support as your party boss in the House?
Well, I'm running for Congress right now, and I'm running one heck of a strong race, a grassroots, people-powered campaign. That is my complete focus. I've actually not had a single conversation with anyone about leadership, nor should I. The people who are supporting me, the thousands of people that have come out to walk door to door for me or make phone calls to win this in a grassroots way, they want me to be their advocate on the healthcare issues and protecting people with pre-existing conditions. They want me to be an advocate to bring a strong infrastructure investment bill before the Congress and move forward with it. They want me to be their advocate on climate change issues, et cetera. So I actually haven't had a single conversation with anyone about that issue.
But they will also associate you with others in Congress, including Nancy Pelosi. Right. Would you support her remaining in leadership?
Well, I am running a grassroots campaign, a people-oriented campaign. I've not had a single conversation with anyone about that issue. So I'm not taking a position on that, only because I haven't had a single conversation.
Okay, you got a question right now about the issue.
Right.
Give us, what do you think?
Well, after the election, when I win this election, I'm going to find out who the candidates are, and I'm going to pick the best candidate that is best for the state of Arizona and our district.
A dodge there, Mr.
Yeah,
Ferrara.
that's a big-time dodge, because one of the people who came out to support Greg's campaign, and I imagine he spoke with her, was Nancy Pelosi. She's already been to Phoenix and done a fundraiser. So I think Greg's vote is sewn up. Nancy wants that gavel, and Greg is another vote. She needs 218, and he's a vote in the hopper.
Well, who would you like to...
He's basically, if anybody here believes that, this is why people are tired of career politicians. That was the biggest smokescreen ever. And it's insulting to the viewers that you couldn't answer that question. It's Nancy Pelosi. Kevin McCarthy.
Okay.
With that in mind, do you think residents of Congressional District 9, do you think that they are that opposed to Nancy Pelosi and that fond of Kevin McCarthy that this is a good stand by you?
I'm just saying that he's saying he doesn't know who he's voting for, and that's up to them. Maybe it's a plus for him that it's Nancy Pelosi, but why won't he just say it? Well, I think he's the one actually saying that he must be concerned that he doesn't know how popular she is in the district, because he wouldn't stand by it. I'm standing by my vote. Kevin McCarthy, he said he's going to be running. Yeah. If he runs, I will support Kevin McCarthy.
Sadly, was one of the leaders of the effort to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And if we repeal the Affordable Care Act, tens of millions of Americans, hundreds of thousands here in Arizona, will lose their coverage. People with pre-existing condition will not be able to get health insurance at reasonable rates. Kevin McCarthy was sadly one of the leaders in the House in that effort. Again, thank God our Senator John McCain did the right thing on that issue to protect the Affordable Care Act.
Keep track of it. Fortunately, Nancy Pelosi reminded us that we had to pass the Affordable Care Act to find out what was in it. That's one of the great moments in political rhetoric. We've got to pass it to find out what's in it.
The previous question kind of aimed to the next one, and that is, it's Congressional District 9. This is a swing district. There are lots of conservatives, there are lots of liberals, and a lot of folks in between. Right. Are you too conservative for this district?
Not at all. Part of the reason I love CD9 is because I think it is a microcosm of America. The thing I love the most about CD9 is you have to be accountable because of the fact that it's not a safe seat. Most politicians like safe seats. I like it because it's not. I like it because if I'm fortunate enough to be elected in 2018, when I come back in 2020, I have to do a good job. I'm going to get hit from the right and the left. And if I didn't do my job, just like every other person, just like you guys, you have to be held accountable. So if you look on my primary, what I did is I got attacked from the right all the time during my primary.
Are you too left for this district?
Well, as mayor of the city of Phoenix, I worked in a bipartisan way and had a very successful run. Look, I'll put my pro-business record up against anyone. Remember, over 130,000 jobs created. City of Phoenix was the fastest growing big city in the United States of America. People voted with their feet because they liked what we were doing in the city of Phoenix. The highest wage growth of any city, and we made smart investments in public transportation. We passed an equal pay for equal work ordinance so that women got the same wages inside the city or with contractors. We protected our LGBTQ community and people with disabilities. So if you like pro-business, pro-people policies, that's what I supported as a mayor. That's exactly the kind of leadership I'm going to provide in Congress, working in a bipartisan way. Everything we did at the city of Phoenix, every vote that we made, pro-business, pro-people, were all done in a bipartisan way. And I think we need more of that type of leadership in Washington, D.C. I'm a leader. Right. I'm an advocate. And party politics will be secondary to making the right choices for my district.
Would you accept the endorsement? Would you appear with President Trump if he came out here to support you?
Probably not, because I'm running my own campaign. This is what I'm doing. And I told you at the beginning that I'm a John McCain Republican. The reason I'm an Arizona native and I'm a Navy captain, and that's why I'm here, is because John McCain, I always felt like I was particularly blessed because John McCain was like the patron senator of the Navy.
That's John McCain. But we're
Right.
talking about President Trump. What are your views of the president's just actions in office?
I think it's a mixed record. I think things like the economy, tax reform, decreased regulation, supporting the military, those are really good things. I think some of the other, I think a lot of people, the tweets, I'm not happy with. The trade, I was an outspoken person that was very concerned and even critical of the trade and tariff policy. Again, it's coming around because we were able to sign an agreement this week. We have an agreement with Europe. So, maybe there's a method to the madness, and I'm willing to support good policies, but I am not a rubber stamp for anyone. And I think that's one of the things that this is a referendum on. And my opponent, I'm sure, cannot say that because he is going to vote down the party line. I'm going to vote for the people of CD9. I'm putting about country first, not political party.
Your assessment of President Trump?
Well, I didn't vote for President Trump, and I'm frustrated with many of his policies, separating children from families at their border. It's so heartbreaking that not only for those children and the trauma they're going to suffer the rest of their lives, but it hurts the United States standing on the globe. I'm frustrated that President Trump pulled us out of the Paris Climate Accord. The United States needs to show leadership on the issue of climate change. We need to move forward with clean energy jobs and not move backwards. But the question I often get asked is, will you work with President Trump? And the answer is yes. When we can work together on public policies that support the economy and jobs here in this district, then of course I'll work with him. Let me give you a perfect example. The president has talked a lot about infrastructure and support for infrastructure. I'm a big city mayor. I'm going to be I'm going to act like a mayor of all of CD9, working with the mayor and city council and business community of Chandler and Mesa and Tempe and Scottsdale and of course in the city of Phoenix. And so if we have an opportunity to create good jobs through infrastructure investment and the president will support it, of course I'm going to work it. I'm a professional. I'm an advocate. I'm someone who gets things done. I've operated in a bipartisan way and will continue to do so as a member of Congress.
Tax cuts put through by Republicans, promoted by the president. Would you have voted for those tax cuts?
No. In fact, those tax cuts are very dangerous. Let me tell you exactly why. Right now, we've added almost $2 trillion to our deficit. And just last week, one of the president's economic advisors says that they're going to be implementing policies to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid because they have to pay for the tax cuts that they just did. As everybody watching here knows, almost all of the benefit went to the wealthiest Americans, the top 1%. Almost all of the benefit went to the largest corporations in the form of stock buyback. People are smart watching this television show. They know that middle-class Americans did not get a pay raise as a result of the trickle-down theory underlying the tax cuts. Didn't benefit working class and middle class Americans, and now we're putting at risk Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid.
Let's find out. Did you support those tax cuts? Would you have voted for them?
Well, obviously I didn't have a vote, but yes, I did support them, and I would have voted for them. And I just also have to fact check one. On Greg's website, he calls it 1.6 trillion. The other night, last week on a call, he called it 1.8 trillion. Now it's up to 2. So Greg's adding 200 billion to the deficit every couple days on that tax plan. So he should check his notes. But, first of all, yes. And I'm also astonished that he's being a fiscal conservative. So the tax cuts are helpful. The Atlanta Fed is going to report out that we're going to have 4.6% GDP growth. That is going to be the way we're going to get out of our debt crisis. And that is going to be putting people to work. Because remember, the entitlement programs, Medicare, my dad is 86, and I'm one of his main, and I support him. I own my childhood home because of a catastrophic medical illness. So I live it every day. So I understand the challenges, and there is no way I'm going to do anything that's going to hurt my dad, whether it's for Medicare, whether it's for Social Security.
But the argument is that these tax cuts are a sugar high, and the deficits are rising, and someone someday is going to have to pay for those. And Republicans, deficit spending has not been a hallmark of Republicans in the past, and now all of a sudden we're seeing Republicans embracing this. Right. Do you embrace that?
No, I don't embrace increased deficit spending. I'm a Reagan common sense Republican, so I believe in fiscal conservatism. But the Obama administration, for 8 years, we were in a period, we had the slowest, recovery. So from the Great Recession ever. It was called secular stagnation. Larry Summers, his genius, said, this is the new normal, 1.5, 1.6% growth. That's all we can do. I'd rather believe in people and believe in Americans that we can do better. And that's what we're seeing. And I completely disagree. Again, this is Nancy Pelosi's lines, crumbs, and, I guess $1,000 or $1,200, $100 a month might not be much to Nancy Pelosi because she's worth $100 million. I don't know what Greg's worth, but maybe that's not a lot to him. But for other people, it's a cable bill, it's gas in their car, it's something else. So I think that's a pretty good thing.
Pivoting to another important issue, critics say that you made Phoenix a sanctuary city. What's your response to that criticism, and what have you done on this issue and to prevent really a large number of illegal immigrants from coming to this city?
Well, no city in the state of Arizona is a sanctuary city under state law. What we did do is pass a smart public policy that ensures that victims of crime would come forward and not risk deportation. That is smart public safety policy. But the reality is this when it comes to issues that relates to immigration. Look, nothing represents a broken Washington system more than the failure to pass smart immigration policy. We need to do this in a bipartisan way. And I support plans similar to what Senator McCain and Senator Flake supported just a few years ago. We had a bipartisan plan on the table that increased border security using technology, which is a much smarter, more efficient way of doing it, put more boots on the ground, and did have an earned path to citizenship. Over 2/3 of the senators voted for it, but it was the Republicans in the Congress that, because of the Tea Party element of the extreme right, wouldn't even get that vote of hearing. Our dreamers, these young people, these people who are so talented that grew up here, they need to take their rightful place as leaders in this community. We need to include a Clean Dream Act as part of comprehensive immigration reform. Once we get that passed, these other issues will fall by the wayside.
Mr. Ferrara.
Yeah, I mean, in the interest of some comity here, I'm going to agree with a lot of what my opponent said. But although one thing I'll diverge on is he likes to talk about what happened in the past and, what Congresses didn't do. And I'd much rather talk about what we will do. And if I'm elected to Congress, what I'll do. And I will work in a bipartisan manner. And we do need comprehensive immigration reform. We do need to allow the law-abiding dreamers to come out of the shadows, to become permanent legal residents, and to have a pathway to citizenship. We had a great program when I was in the Navy where we had an arrangement with the Philippines, and people in small, poor Philippine villages could join the Navy and become citizens. And it was a wonderful program. I worked with hundreds of amazing Filipino patriots throughout my 25-year career.
What would you do to secure the border? Something that President Trump and members of your party are calling for before we can even talk about DACA and some of these other issues.
Because you need to secure the border in order to basically kind of hit the reset button and start fresh. And also to stop the drug trafficking and the human trafficking. That's the most important reason to secure the border. But I have a lot of expertise in this. I was in a war zone. I lived on a base that people were perpetually trying to breach the perimeter to do us a lot of permanent mortal harm. And you know what we did to secure that? We had a physical barrier, we had electronic devices, we had drones and other sensors, and we had manpower. And I think if that's what we do on the battlefield to keep our troops safe, like myself and my brothers and sisters in arms, then I think it's a good idea for the southern border.
So no continuous wall.
No, like I said, I think it needs to be a comprehensive combination approach. What we did in the military.
If the president threatened a government shutdown, if he did not get money to build a wall, how would you vote?
I'd never support a government shutdown. I've lived through enough government shutdowns as a leader in the Navy. And one thing I think it's worthwhile to talk about, because there has been sort of the news cycle has been so crowded out by a lot of other things, obviously. But it's important to say that this Congress, this Republican Congress, has passed, the budgets, so we don't have to have a CR. We've had a CR, a continuing resolution, for like the past 20 years. This is the first Congress in 2 decades to not have to have a continuous resolution. I think that's a pretty good accomplishment for the House. So, and I think, and again, I think that's something to be proud of.
Well, I think it's unfortunate that this Republican Congress hasn't even given Clean Dream Act an opportunity for an up or down vote. And that's really tragic for the lives of so many thousands of young people, leaders that I know well in the city of Phoenix. We're lucky to have a diverse community here in the city of Phoenix. This Republican Congress, unfortunately, hasn't even given an opportunity to have an up or down vote on on a DREAM Act or comprehensive immigration reform, which would take hundreds of thousands of people out of the shadows and fully into our economy. Now, on the issue of the border wall, it's important for Dr. Ferrara and everyone watching at home know that my approach would be to, like it was for Senator McCain and Senator Flake, use technology, which is a much more efficient, smarter way of dealing with the border, and is more respectful of our tribal communities. Because, you know, much of the Arizona border with Mexico is made up of tribal community land, and it's very disrespectful to talk about a wall on Native American land when they oppose it.
Yeah, I want to speak to the Clean Dream Act for a moment, because I think it's important to talk about that, because what my opponent's referring to is where he wants to give amnesty to the Dreamers without any border security, and I think that's irresponsible, and we talked about that just a moment ago, Vaughn. I mean, all the Republicans have said, and the president offered it. He offered 100% amnesty to all the Dreamers and even the non-registered Dream Act folks in exchange for border security, and Chuck Schumer said no. He said the only thing he cares about are the people, and then when he had an opportunity, he said no. So he has used, the Democrats in Congress and in the Senate have used these people as political pawns.
Did he say no because there were other facters involved in the negotiation, like
called border security,
called a border wall, funding for a border wall?
But if he really cared about the people, Greg talked about he's a people-driven. You know, first of all, like, you know where I am on it. And I'd like to have comprehensive immigration reform and a balanced, common sense border security plan. But when the Democrats who say, and they hold out that they care nothing more than about these people, and they had an opportunity to get like 1.6 million people immediate amnesty, something that has never been offered, they could never get, and they said no, then I think that is not very, bargaining in very good faith.
Does the government?
So what about those people?
Does the government do enough to crack down on businesses who hire undocumented immigrants, Mr. Stanton?
I think the answer is no, and we ought to use E-Verify and make sure it's the advanced technologies as possible, and we ought to be strong on enforcement. But again, the main point is, instead of taking this piecemeal, little bit by little bit, is we ought to take a comprehensive approach, just like Senator McCain and Senator Flake led on in the United States Senate just a few years ago in a bill that couldn't even get a hearing because of the so-called Freedom Caucus, the far right in the United States Congress. Instead, let's take a comprehensive approach so we can put these issues to bed. We can move forward as a country. Let's have smart border security using technology. Let's have more boots on the ground, and let's have an earned path to citizenship, including a clean Dream Act, so we're not using these young people as pawns. Let's move forward in this country.
I want to follow up with you here in a minute, but many in Arizona's congressional delegation are members of the Freedom Caucus. We are entering an era in which Arizona's Senate delegation really is not going to have as much clout, obviously, as it once did. So what can you do as a member of Congress, a Democrat from Arizona, to push and advance that agenda?
Yes. Well, let me speak about the Freedom Caucus. That's not the kind of leader I'm going to be in Congress. I'm going to be a pragmatic, bipartisan, solutions-oriented leader. And that involves, on occasion, compromise. And so remember, the bill that I'm talking about, the comprehensive immigration reform, it was a compromise bill that had the support over 2/3 of the members. So I'm not going to be involved in any extreme caucuses that are going to vote against anything. I'm going to be in the middle of the mix. I'm going to win this race. I believe the Democrats are going to be in the majority starting after November. I'm going to be in the majority party. So you're going to see a lot of action out of me and my office, just like I got done as mayor of the city of Phoenix. I want to be judged based on what I get done, not whether I give good speeches on the House floor. I'm an action-oriented person.
Mr. Ferrara, do businesses, let's go back, do businesses do enough to crack down on the hiring of illegal immigrants?
So I think the responsibility is borne across. First of all, you can't ask businesses to be in the law enforcement business. But businesses have a responsibility to hire people that are legal, that are supposed to be here legally. And so the E-Verify system is a system we have. The E-Verify, and I support that. I support businesses doing checks on people to make sure that they have a legal status in order to work.
Can more be done?
E-Verify can be made better. You know, I've gone down, even though it's not my district, because it's important to the state. It's a huge economic impact to our state, to the growers down in the Yuma area. And I've talked to them about this because I want to make sure, because I'm very pro-immigration, I want to make sure that they have the labor they need to be able to keep our economy moving in Arizona. And so I've asked them, and they say it's very cumbersome and it's very burdensome. They're all for having people here legally, but again, this is back to, big government, big regulation. Let's make it onerous. People want to have, if you want people to be able to eat affordable fruit and produce and vegetables, you got to make it that they can get it to table in a reasonable way. And if you make it too burdensome, then it's not helping anybody.
Pivot here. Climate change. You accept the science on climate change, global warming, man-made climate change?
Sure. So I'm a scientist, right? I'm the only scientist, I think, here at the table. So I think the verdict is out on is final that the climate is changing. There is a man-made element. I think the real question is what is the effect on it, and what are we going to do to counter those effects, and what are we going to do to survive and thrive and make sure that we have a planet that is inhabitable and that we don't have, when I went to Indonesia following the 2004 tsunami, that was the biggest natural disaster in over 100 years since Krakatoa. 230,000 people killed. I had to see people buried with bulldozers. So I understand what natural disasters are like, and we don't want to have them, and it's important.
Should Congress, should law address climate change and cut down on greenhouse gases and other things that many scientists say contribute to global warming and climate change?
I think if we should always, it's common sense to make sure that we emit as little carbon as possible. And, Greg talked about us backing out of the Paris Accord. The United States is actually the leader in the world on decreasing carbon emissions. Just because we pulled out of the Paris Accord, all that did was save us hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars that was going overseas. It doesn't restrict our ability to be good stewards. So back to your question, we have to be good stewards of our carbon. We need a balanced approach for energy, because at the end of the day, what I know is that infrastructure is as important to survivability as anything.
Climate change. Do you accept the science, and do you accept the idea of a comprehensive global approach as opposed to one particular target?
Climate change is real, and we have to take action. I'm very frustrated that this administration is going backwards on the issue of climate change, taking us out of the Paris Climate Accord, the international agreement to fight climate change. You see the recent rule on methane release, et cetera. The role of Congress is checks and balances. And when I get to Congress, I'm going to be a strong check on this administration on many issues, but particularly on the issue of climate change. In the city of Phoenix, mayors when I was mayor and mayors across the country, when the president pulled out, we leaned in. And we said cities are going to do more. The city of Phoenix did even more on solar. We have one of the largest solar arrays in the United States of America. We have the largest fleet of alternative fuel vehicles in the entire United States of America, municipal fleet. We are right now, as we speak, changing every street light in the city of Phoenix, 100,000 street lights to LED. We won many national and international awards for our leadership on climate change. You see, people think of climate change as disproportionately affecting the cities near water because of rising water tables, but it's impacting us here greatly. Extreme heat, the forest fires, and of course the drought conditions in water. And as a Congress member, I'm going to be an advocate. We're going to fight back against this administration on the issue of pulling back environmental protections, and I'm going to exercise checks and balances.
Both of you are running in an era where parents are very frustrated about the state of the public education system here in Arizona. As a congressman, can each of you foresee any sort of scenario in which you work with, federal officials to do more to help Arizona in terms of funding? And
we need to keep these very brief.
All right, I'll be as brief as possible. Look, I was an advocate for Proposition 204 when I was mayor of the city of Phoenix to bring more resources to our public schools. My sister is a special education teacher in the Cartwright District for 20 years. My brother is a superintendent of the Washington Elementary School District, the very school district that we went to as kids. I'm a passionate education supporter. I stood with Governor Ducey on Proposition 123 when it was a very controversial thing to do. I have used the bully pulpit that I have been blessed with when the voters have given me to support bonds and overrides of schools all across the city of Phoenix. So when you're an elected official, whether it be city, state, or federal, you have a strong bully pulpit, and I'm going to use that bully pulpit to support public education.
Okay, quickly, please.
Education, I'm passionate about education, but what I certainly wouldn't do, and I think what Greg said is so disingenuous, because as we talked about and as your newspapers reported extensively, he has sacrificed at least $200 million right out of our public education system as mayor. Imagine what he'll do in the federal government. It's a nightmare. And so, yes, I do support education, and in Congress, I will make sure that education dollars flow to the state, that there are no quid pro quos, that education is very local, but most of all, parents have the right to determine how their children are educated, and so that is, my priority.
Yeah, because Dr. Ferrara repeated the misstatement, it bears repeating.
Gotta make it fast.
In the city of Phoenix, when the agreements they saw, the development agreements approved by the governor and legislature that we did, all of them, we required any developer to make it in lieu of payment to public schools, so our public schools were held harmless.
Got to stop you right there.
Right.
Time for closing say yes. And going in reverse order of our opening remarks, we start with Dr. Steve Ferrara.
Well, thank you, everybody, for watching. I think this election presents a stark contrast between Greg and I. There's already too much corruption in Washington. I think the viewers can see for themselves the difference between us. We have a career politician who's focused on helping his cronies, who's focused on bumper stickers and Band-Aids, accolades and clubs. I'm focused on solutions. He wants to raise your taxes. He wants to wreck the economy. I want to keep your taxes low. I want to grow the economy. He wants to put more government in your health care. I want to put you and your doctor in charge of your health care. I think the choice is obvious. I hope you will vote for me on November 6th. Thank you very much.
And now the closing statement from Greg Stanton.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Ferrara, for a mostly positive debate here tonight. And Ted and Yvonne, thank you for hosting. Look, I love this community. I grew up in West Phoenix in a working class family, and my parents stressed giving back to the community. Service is what my wife, Nicole, and I are trying to pass on to our two young children. And it's that ethic that I brought to City Hall and to the Attorney General's office, working in a bipartisan way to get positive things done. And we did create over 130,000 jobs in the city of Phoenix, the highest wage growth of any city in the United States of America. We led the way on clean energy. We completely revitalized downtown, and we worked to reduce health care costs. In Washington, we all know it's the opposite. It's tribalism. It's hyperpartisanship. I want to be a different kind of Congress member, one who will bring people together, focus on bipartisan, people-oriented solutions, and that's exactly how I'm going to operate as your representative, your advocate in Congress. And I ask for your vote. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you both very much. You've been watching Arizona Horizons debate for Congressional District 9, brought to you by Arizona PBS and the Arizona Republic.
Thanks so much to the candidates for their participation, and thank you for watching. I'm Yvonne Winchett-Sanchez.
And I'm Ted Simons. Tune in tomorrow to Arizona Horizon for our debate between candidates for Secretary of State. Thanks again for joining us tonight. You have a great evening.